I'm not here to teach you SEO. I'm here to teach you what to ask about if you're not the SEO person, if you're the CEO. Hi, welcome to another episode of Baktari MD. Today, we're going to talk about something I think every CEO not only needs to know about, but has to be on some level the master of, especially for a small to medium-sized company, and that is SEO. Why is that important? Well, most companies on some level, especially small to medium, can make or break their company depending on how well their website is. Of course, it depends what industry you're in. And if you don't fully understand what drives people to your website and how you can make your website grow, leaving it up to someone else is literally like, leaving up the fate of your company to other people. So on some level, you have to get involved. I know when I was starting out, I was very frustrated because as a regular business person, medical person, it's not something I knew about how to drive people to the website or how to make our website work. And I was really frustrated. I was very frustrated because I would talk to people and I'd hear all this jargon about SEO. I didn't know what it meant. And so I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know what was the right thing to do. And it's a pretty nebulous field to begin with, right? So for someone who is not in that space, it's even worse. I actually did something really crazy. I actually started to go to SEO conferences for SEO people just so I could see what they were talking about. Now, of course, that was a big investment of time, but the companies we were involved in, we were living and dying by our website traffic. So for me, it kind of made sense. But going to those conferences, I learned what I at least need to know, what the lingo is and what kind of questions to ask and what the pitfalls are. And I'm going to talk about the SEO industry because I don't want to say it's on par with used car sales, but it's pretty close, especially if you just randomly get involved with SEO with some random people. It's not for the faint of heart. It can be very treacherous, and there's a lot of people out there who are just making money on it, but not providing a whole lot of value. So if you as the CEO don't at least have a handle on it, I can tell you, in terms of your website and traffic and growth, you're probably going to pay a price. So is it worth for you to learn a little bit so you can manage the people who are doing your SEO and ask the right questions and make sure you're not wasting money and make sure you're not hurting your website? Okay, so when we're talking about SEO, at the end of the day, what are we really talking about? We're talking about getting people to go to your website, to either buy your product, get information about your company, to work with your company. Your job is to get as much organic traffic to your website as humanly possible. Now, as CEO, that may not be exactly your job, but you have to manage the people who are doing that. So that often happens by hiring an outside firm, or sometimes bringing it in a house. But the problem with almost the whole industry is there's such a high percentage of, I don't want to call it fraud, but basically worthless things that people will do to help grow your website. Often at worst, they hurt you, and at best, they don't help you. You just waste a lot of money. You can actually spend several years throwing money at your website without making a difference. At the end of the day, you have to understand what pitfalls there are. So the first thing I want to do is break up SEO into two categories. One we'll call black hat and one we'll call white hat. So black hat are things that people will do to your website to drive traffic to it, which Google will realize is a ruse, to put it just sort of in a rough manner. So basically, black hat SEO are, let's call them dirty tricks that Google doesn't like, that will drive people to your website, but ultimately Google will probably figure it out and you'll get penalized, and it could be the death of your website. The other one is white hat SEO, and white hat SEO, which we're going to talk about today, it has at least 4 components to it. It does take work, it does take energy, and it takes a team that really knows what white hat SEO is. Now, of course, there's a spectrum. So there's between black and white hat, there's this thing called, gray, which is some of the things people might want you to do are not totally black hat, but they're not totally white hat. Again, in the long run, doing only white hat SEO is probably the way to go. So when we talk about driving traffic to your website, the first thing you have to understand is that Google essentially, and we're going to talk about Google, but Bing and other search engines do the same thing, but Google controls 95% of the market. So we're going to just talk about Google. Now, so the way Google approaches it is there's billions of websites out there, and what they want to do is take all those billions of websites and then put them in some sort of order. So when someone searches Google, they will get referred to a website that will help them. So that's how Google makes money, right? Because Google wants them to use their search engine. So what does Google try to do? It tries to look at the person's search and say, what websites could we serve up to this person that will make them want to use Google even more because it's relevant to their search? So what Google's trying to do by scanning these billions of websites is to scan them and say, okay, when someone searches for X, Y, and Z, these are the top 10 websites we're going to show them in this order because we think this is going to be the most relevant to that person's search. So you can reverse engineer this for yourself. So what you want Google to understand is the industry you're in. If someone searches for what you do, you want Google to say, okay, to make this person super happy, we're going to put Bob's, pool service company as number one because this person needs pool service in this suburb of this town, and this would be the most germane offering. So think like Google, and what Google wants to do is Google wants to make the people who are searching happy, so more people use Google, so Google can make more money. So indirectly, it will help you if you understand Google's motive. So how does Google actually go about this then? How do they determine and what are the things they look for? So really there's four things Google's looking at. So Google is looking on the technical aspects of your website. They're looking on the on-page content of your website. They're also looking at the off-page content of your website. And lastly, they're looking at this thing called links to your website, meaning links from other high authority websites to your website, signaling to Google that you should be taken more seriously in a matter of speech. But let's break those down, okay? So let's talk about Google and how it looks at your website. Well, the first thing you have to understand is your website has what we call a domain authority. And domain authority is a rough idea of what Google's value of your website is on a scale of 1 to 100. It's not a perfect science, but your domain authority is something you should be aware of. Now, we use SEMrush, but there's Moz and a few other people. I'll put a link to SEMrush down below. But a lot of it's free. Some of it you have to pay for. But however you get there, understanding your domain authority is really important. And when you're first starting out with a website, your domain authority is like 1. It's nothing. And what we're going to talk about today is not only how to grow that domain authority, but how to really understand what goes into each one. Now, I have to tell you, there's plenty of podcasts, YouTube videos from people who talk about SEO, and that's their thing. I am not an SEO expert. I'm not here to teach you SEO. I'm here to teach you what to ask about if you're not the SEO person, if you're the CEO. Okay, so if you really want to know SEO, there's courses you can take. You can go to conferences. This is not a replacement for that. There's amazing videos on all aspects of SEO, but I'm here to just give you the big picture. And if you want to drill down more, or you want to become the SEO guy in your company, go for it. There's a lot to learn. I just want to give you the high level perspective as maybe the vice president, the president, the CEO, what you need to know. So again, I want you to kind of keep that in mind. So for all you super SEO people, don't put comments there that I skipped something. I'm here just to give the high level and not really teach SEO per se. Okay, so let's talk about technical SEO. So what most people don't understand is, how does Google even find your website? Okay, you create a website tomorrow, you put it up there. How do they know you exist? Which is really interesting. The first time I heard this, it kind of blew me away. Google, let's call it at 3 a.m. when most burglars are breaking into jewelry stores, Google is, with your permission, breaking into the back end of your server and crawling your website. And by crawl, what it mean is that a bot comes in from Google and literally crawls your website and looks at everything. Now, you give it permission, and you give all the search engines permission on your server. You may not know this, but the person who's hosting your website is allowing this to happen. And I think the first time I heard that, it was a long time ago, but it kind of struck me. So we're basically saying, okay, here's a new website, we're putting it up, and maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow night, whenever, Google will go into the server, and you can actually go into your server and look at the log of when Google came in last, and when Bing came in last, and what they found, and how much of the website they crawled. This is all information, believe it or not, exists. You can see the log of what we call these crawls, where Google crawls in and literally says, what's this website? Now, you got to look at it from Google's perspective. They've got, let's say, 100 billion websites to crawl, and they have to crawl them, randomly and intermittently, because they can't just crawl it once and leave and never come back, right? Because if they do that, and you put up some inappropriate stuff 2 weeks later, they got to know about it, right? So they crawl it, but they keep crawling and keep crawling for new data and changes, modifications, updates, whatever you're doing to your website. You have new code, you have new back-end, front-end stuff. So Google will continue to crawl your website. So knowing this, you'll understand that when Google crawls your website, it's really getting information on two broad categories of stuff. Okay, one we call sort of the back-end aspect of your website. And if you've ever developed a website, you have a back-end developer and you have a front-end developer, and the back-end developer is really the person who writes the code and all the stuff that goes into basically the nuts and bolts of behind the content of the website. And so how good your website is from a technical point of view, and the technical aspects of it, Google's going to want to know about. And let me just talk about that really briefly. So when Google crawls your website, it really wants to know, for example, how easy is it to read, the code that the website is written in. Does the code make sense? Is it difficult for it to understand what the website is about, what it's trying to do? So basically, how well the code is written will impact how happy Google is to crawl it. Also, the speed that it takes. So if it's a very cumbersome technical website that the code is not good, it's very difficult for Google to go and read all the pages. Also, you have to see how mobile friendly it is. In other words, Google is going to say, well, this is a good website, but it's not very mobile friendly. And since 80% of our traffic is on mobile, we're going to not rank this website really well because it's not going to help 80% of people. So how mobile friendly it is. And then there are things on your website, which I don't want to get too technical because I'm going to leave that for other videos. There's a sitemap there. Think of it as the content, which is not totally accurate, but think of it as a book, and you go to the first few pages and you get the content and where everything is. Well, that's what the sitemap of your website is. So Google goes to your sitemap and looks at to basically see what it should find on your website. And that sitemap is going to be important, and that's something where if you do a good job, bad job, if the sitemap automatically updates and tells Google, on and on and on. You don't really need to know that. The other thing is metadata. So every page of your website has metadata on the back end of it, so Google can better understand the flow and the organization and other things beyond that. So you can see this technical SEO as a whole industry onto itself. But that technical SEO can make or break you. I often wonder why, people who write websites, are not technical SEO people, because what you'll find is you'll have someone create your website, right? And then you'll hire a technical SEO expert, and all they're going to do is criticize often the guy who wrote the website and why they didn't structure it this way or that way. Again, if you're getting your website from one of these free, $99 create your own website in 2 hours, you're probably going to miss out on some of this stuff. And just to comment on that. So obviously, Apple and IBM and major companies do not, use these, build your website in an hour for some of these reasons. They want to really invest in the technical SEO of the website. Remember, Google has to crawl billions of website every week, every month. If it takes them 10 hours to crawl your website, they're not going to do it. They're going to leave. And believe me, when they leave, they don't index what they didn't get to. So what's interesting is you have to also find out, was Google able to crawl my whole website? Did they run into problems? And if they did they leave? Because the bot that Google sends has a limited amount of time. And we call that, again, without getting too technical, your crawl budget, okay? Your Google crawl budget. So you have just like anything else, you have a budget for food, you have a budget for this, you have a budget for that. Well, your website has a budget, okay? And Google is going to give it a budget. The bot's coming in for 10 minutes. Whether we figure out your website or not, that's up to you. But we're leaving because we got a billion other websites to check out later today. So again, I don't know if any of these numbers are accurate. This is just to kind of give you a sense of the problem at hand and how you can be in front of it. So to wrap this whole idea of technical SEO, you have to be involved in who's going to write the front end code for your website. Do they understand technical SEO? Do they understand a Google crawl budget? Do they understand mobile friendly and speed? How fast your Google will, from a technical point of view, give you more kudos if your page can load fast. So if you have a lot of, heavy code that takes forever to load, you will potentially get dinged for that. So your sitemap, mobile friendliness, speed, your crawl ability, all of that needs to be understood. So if you just let anyone write your website and assume they've addressed all that, good luck, because when you pay someone to write your website for $500 or $1,000, from their point of view, they just want to hand you a website that on the front end looks good. But they're not going to sit there and say, well, for $500, I didn't really work very hard on your sitemap, or I didn't put metadata everywhere it's supposed to be. I didn't put, mobile friendliness. I didn't get the speed up to 100% optimization. Unless you ask for it, unless you're aware of those things, and you got one person that's willing to write, do a website for $500 and someone else is willing to do it for $5,000, that may be some of the difference. Unfortunately, what's really mind-boggling, even the person that offers to do it for $5,000 doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do what I just described. So it's not, to make it even worse, paying more doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to get all that. You're going to get the website, and a few years down the line, someone does an analysis and tells you, oh, wow, they didn't do all of this. And then, then you're going to be in a tough position. Okay, so when Google crawls your website, we said they're going to look at the technical SEO. But the next thing Google is going to do, which is they're going to look at your on-page content, which now has to do with front-end development of your website. Remember, your website has front-end and back-end development. So Google is going to look at the back-end by crawling it and looking at technical SEO. And then it's also going to look at the content, okay, the on-page content, and that's going to be the front-end development and the content that you're putting onto the website. Now, why is that relevant? Well, okay, if you are the 10th bakery in the suburb of Maryland, some city in Maryland, and you want people to find you, well, you're going to have to put content there that will tell Google, yes, if somebody in a suburb of Boston needs a bakery, we should be the first one to be shown, and that content should communicate that relevance and importance. So whatever it is that you want Google to rank you for, that content on your website has to basically tell a bot, because remember, we're not talking to a human being. A bot has got to figure out that you're the best accounting firm in Chicago, right? So this is a bot. It's not a human being. You can't plead your case. how good you are. So a lot of that has to do with keyword optimization, relevant content, original content. You get dinged for duplicate content. So if you got the content from Wikipedia or from your other website, all of these things will tell the bot this is relevant, but maybe not so relevant. So, often people ask me, hey, I don't understand why my competitors are getting ranked higher than me. And it may be technical or may be some other things we're going to talk about. But, are you putting in content that tells Google that out of all the accounting firms in Chicago, you should be ranked number one? What content are you putting in there? Because remember, Google wants to serve the website that will make the person searching the happiest, right? So if you kind of look at it with that lens. So Google wants to make the searcher happy. And is the content on your website going to make the person super happy? So they're going to say, wow, look, Google's amazing. I'm always going to come to Google when I need something. That's what they're trying to do. And that's how Google makes so much money, because then they can sell ads and blah, 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 blah. But you get the gist of it. So you actually have to reverse engineer Google's motives. And then the content that you write for your front end, okay, has to have that in mind. Okay, so far we've talked about 2 out of the 4 things that I really want to talk about in terms of SEO. So we talked about the technical SEO, which is sort of the back end and code of your website and your domain authority as it relates to that. But domain authority and how you rank is also has to do with your on-page content, the second thing I talked about. And then I want to talk about the third and fourth thing. So the third thing I want to talk about is your off-page content. And by off-page content, I basically, for the most part these days, mean social media content. And your social media content needs to help Google understand why your website is relevant. So think of it as the fans of your website, right? And the content that you put on your social media should reinforce why you are the Michael Jordan of whatever it is people are searching for. And to the extent that your social media content can support, reinforce the relevance of that, is really important. The other thing, which is sort of related to off-page content SEO, which I want to talk about, is reviews. It's not exactly the same thing, but it is often off-page content. And let's talk about reviews really quickly. So obviously, reviews it's a mixed bag, because a lot of people struggle with reviews because they can reviews can hurt you. But I think a lot of positive reviews from Google's perspective validates some of the other things that they're looking at your website. So if you have reviews on multiple other websites that talk about what a great company you are and what a great website you are, those are soft signals to Google that your website should be taken more seriously. So let's talk about that. If you don't have an actual strategy to build reviews and you're just going to leave it up to chance, it's probably not going to be good. So again, as the CEO, you need to be involved in that. So how do you get good reviews? First of all, you got to be a good company, right? If you're putting out a bad product, people don't like you. But let's say you are. Let's say you're fantastic. Let's say you're amazing. Still, it's not obvious. People often complain only, when they want to complain, when something's wrong. Rarely does someone go home and say, oh, well, that was an amazing experience. Let me take 5-10 minutes out of my day to write this great review. So one of the things that we have found is we use third-party companies to reach out to our clients and encourage them to write reviews. And also by the fact that it's a third party, it really adds legitimacy. So we use a company, Listen 360, but there are other companies like that you can partner with that will reach out to your clients and get those reviews. Because, especially if you have a great company and people are super happy with you, it's part of your job to get the word out that what a great company you are. But that sends signals to Google saying, hey, we're amazing. And companies like that will also help you, encourage people to review on Google, on their website, other websites. So really have an action plan to build your reviews. Do not leave it up to chance. If you leave it up to chance, you're probably going to get a lot of the 1% of people that will complain no matter what you do, right? No matter what service you have, you can't make 100% of people happy. And if you're making 99% of people happy, but only the 1% that you're not making happy are writing all your reviews, I don't think that's going to end well. So you need to reach out to that 99% and say, hey, you loved us, right? We took care of you. Like, we're the best thing you've ever seen. Help us grow. Help us spread the word, right? Tell everyone, about your experience. Now, the one thing I would say is, please, of course, this kind of gets into black hat SEO. Please do not pay people to write reviews. Please do not write fake reviews. Again, this is what we're going to. I'm at the end of this thing. I'm going to talk about white hat and black hat, but these are the things you don't want to do. Okay, long term, the cream will rise to the top, right? So if you provide great service and you really reach out to your best customers and say, hey, spread the word. We want to grow. Help us grow by telling the world what you thought of us. Okay, think about that. So you need a strategy for that. That's just not going to happen. And don't let that 1% tell the story about your company. Have the 99% tell the story about your company. The last thing, which I had no idea, is link building. And this is also falls into black hat and gray hat and white hat. But link building at the end of the day is whether other websites, especially of higher authority than you, have links to your website. So obviously, if tomorrow morning CNN had a link to your website, what would Google think? They would say, oh, well, CNN has a link to Susie's Bakery in Omaha. So what is Google immediately going to think of Susie's Bakery in Omaha? I'm exaggerating the point, and one link is not necessarily going to do the trick. But if you were to have lots and lots of links from higher authority domains linking back to your website, that would be a good thing. Now, again, this really falls into black hat versus white hat, because there's companies out there that will build links for you, pay other websites to link back to you. But Google's algorithm is pretty smart, and what we have seen in companies who've tried it is Google actually starts to penalize you for it. So link building is something that you really have to invest. So how do you link build organically? The best way to do it, white hat, is to actually have a legitimate reason for these other companies to link back to you. So in other words, if you're involved in some charities and you're actually doing things in the community, and these other websites say, hey, thank you for so-and-so bakery for sponsoring our softball team, whatever. Those are natural links because of good work you've done in the community. Let's say you've been interviewed on a TV station locally and you've had something to contribute. In other words, these links are going to be truly organic and white hat based on things your company has done. You've been involved in the community, you've been involved in the news, you've been involved in other organizations that are making an impact on your community. Your vendors that you use, and the clients you have, refer to you on their website. These are all natural organic links that Google looks for. Now, I have to tell you, there's a cottage industry, some in other countries that you'll get emails from, let us link build for you. And they will literally create 100,000 links back to your website from websites you don't want to know about. And that will actually penalize you and hurt you. So link building is the one thing that I would not outsource to some random company. Is something that you have to be really, really careful. Out of all of the 4 components I talked about, technical SEO, the on-page content SEO, as well as the off-page SEO versus link building. Link building is the one that really, really falls into the black hat segment a lot. You got to be really, really careful. Build organic links back to your website. Now, it kind of does make sense, right? If the Washington Times has a link to your website and CNN has a link to your website, Google can't help but think, okay, your bakery needs to be ranked slightly higher than some other bakeries. So this kind of makes sense. A lot of this SEO stuff, when you really reverse engineer it, kind of makes sense. Okay, so let's just pull back now. So I think you've got the 4 components of SEO. There's more other components and other things I've left out. Again, this is not an A to Z course on technical or on page SEO or SEO in general. There's plenty of websites. I just want you to have the kind of information that any CEO who's managing people who's doing this would be able to ask the right questions and have a better understanding. So this is sort of you know, a crash course for SEO for CEO dummies, if you want to call it that. So, which I include myself in. So that's how I learned it. I learned it out of necessity, and without you having to go through everything I went through. Hopefully, this helps. But let's do want to finish up about this concept of SEO, because it's also very challenging to get SEO help, because one, you need to find an SEO person in-house or outsource it. They have to work with the person who's managing your website, because any changes to the technical SEO, has to be done by your website developer. So it's a challenge to find someone who knows technical SEO, is not just going to just give you some mumbo jumbo. One of the interesting things I found out from going to these SEO conferences is there's software that can be white labeled. So tomorrow morning, I could become an SEO consultant with my own dashboard and website and software. So it's become that much of a commodity. In other words, I can buy a software, call it Joe's SEO company, and go out to people and say, I do SEO. And all it is a software that runs a report. And, it's a 40, 50 page report on everything that needs to be fixed with your website. But it's something you can do on SEMrush yourself or Moz or one of these other websites. But they package it into a white label product, and they make it sound like they've been working on it for weeks and charge you tens of thousands of dollars. And basically, it's just a report that they generated by pressing a button and putting your website in there. So again, you got to be really careful. And unfortunately, the SEO world, I don't want to say 80, 90%, but there's such a high percentage of people who really are not SEO experts, and they're doing nothing more than running a report and then sort of talking the lingo, which you've never heard before. So it sounds very good, but in practicality, it's not. All they're doing is putting your domain into a software, running a 50-page report, say, hey, give me 2 weeks. So it looks like they've spent a lot of time on it. And then they charge you $10,000 for it. And most of that stuff you could find out yourself. And so really not helpful. To get a true SEO expert is a challenge. And then you have to then work on the things that they find or you find in-house to fix the technical SEO, fix the content SEO, work on your offsite SEO, and work on your link building. So the challenge is sort of this black hat versus white hat. If your inbox is anything like mine, probably a day doesn't go by where I get a spam email telling me how they're going to get me to rank number 1 on Google. By the way, as soon as you see that, for the most part, you know that it's one of those operations. But I'm sure all of you have seen this rank number 1 on Google. We're very cheap, friendly. We've had lots of success. And those spam emails, there's millions and millions of them coming through every day. The biggest challenge as the CEO is, how do you filter all that, not fall for that? And believe me, if you do, a lot of those people, if you give them their money, will do black hats SEO, which will give you potentially an immediate rise. But then Google will heavily, heavily penalize your website, and often to the point where it's not recoverable. I've seen people have to literally get a new website because of the damage black hat SEO has done to their website. So I'm telling you all of this so you take this seriously. You take it as seriously as it should be, where you invest some time and energy in at least learning the lingo and learning how to vet people who are going to help you with SEO. So if you like content like this, please, please, please comment, like, and subscribe. I would really love comments about your experiences with SEO, what kind of challenges you've had, how you've overcome them. any tips for that we could use. I'd really love to hear the ups and downs and the challenges people have had. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Baktari MD. Bye.